What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Joe here with Odyssey Off-Road. We have the 24 Raptor 700R Special Edition here. All cleaned and shiny. Haven't really ridden it much, I'll be honest with you. It's just been sitting. Been playing around a lot with the dirt bikes lately. And I haven't really used the Raptor much in the past couple of years, other than trips with the guys, which is like 1 or 2 trips a year, meetups, and dune trips. Even my Blue Raptor, haven't been riding it in the desert much. So, just been sitting. I got 30 hours on it now. The bike is completely stock. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this review with 30 hours on it, because my last Raptor, I had an exhaust and a tune on it probably like within the first 5 hours of owning it. So I never really rode it stock much and don't really remember what the bike felt like when it was stock, because it was basically piped and power commander on it since, like 5 hour mark. I think I took it on one trip when I first got it to the dunes, rode it for a little bit, but I was like at that point just getting back into sport quads and hadn't been on an ATV in many years at that point. So I was just overly impressed with a stock bike at that point, because the Raptor 700 was the largest sport ATV I had ever at that point, most powerful one anyway. So I piped it and tuned it, then eventually added an air intake. So I had a kind of a mild big 3 on that bike for the whole life practically of 125 hours, 130 hours I had that before I got rid of it. Then we picked up this new one here. I've been riding this one completely stock, other than the air injection system delete, which doesn't make really much of a difference in performance. It just helps with the deceleration pop a little bit, and it's still got it. And we'll get into that here in a minute. So I wanted to do my thoughts on owning a bone stock Raptor, after 30 hours riding it, completely stock, nothing done to it, no pipe. The stock, even the insert is still in the pipe. It's completely bone stock. Stock air filter, no tune, no nothing. Just the air injection system delete, and that is it. The rest of the bike's completely stock. We're even on stock tires. So I haven't really done anything to this thing. Upgraded the grips, that was it. That's just a comfort thing. But other than that, and it's got Resto quad headlights, the version 2s. So, but performance-wise, all stock. There's definitely a lot of pros, and there's some cons, in my opinion, after having a tuned and piped Raptor for 120, 130 hours, and then riding this bone stock one for 30 hours. Now, people that ride a stock one their entire life, never do anything to them, will tell you it's more than enough power. You don't need any more, and the bike runs mint, and you don't need to do anything to it. And they're partially correct. It has more than enough power to basically do anything you want. After riding it stock, though, for 30 hours versus riding a piped and tuned one for, many hours. And my 2020 didn't have one of the best pipes on the market. It had a Yoshimura, which is a great quality pipe, but they're not known for making the most horsepower. So I had a Yoshi pipe on that, full system with the tune. So I could have gotten even more power had I had a different pipe, like a Dasa or Rossier or Empire Monster, one of those. But I had the Yoshimura, and for the first half of having the pipe on that bike, even I had the spark arrestor insert the whole time. I only took that out later after owning it for a while and having it put on a dyno tune, and then when that added a little bit more power, honestly, just taking the tip out. But even with it in and being tuned, the power difference versus the stock one, when I first got this and I did initial impressions ride review, I was like, wow, this has got plenty of power, stock, After taking it to the dunes several times and being on, some rides with some others on with it, stock, there is some significant difference in this versus just a piped Raptor with even just a fuel tuner on it. So does this have more than enough power? Absolutely. Yeah, if you have nothing to compare it to and you want to get it and ride it and keep it stock, more power to you. There's nothing wrong with that. It'll last you forever. Change the oil regularly and you'll be good. For me personally, after having ridden one though that's piped and tuned for so long, here's what I've noticed. So the power peak wise, you're going to get a few more horsepower, but it's not the peak power that really, to me, makes adding a pipe and a fuel tuner better. It's the quality of how it runs and also the usable power. And I'll elaborate on that. So the quality and how it runs, stock, these things run super, super, super lean. I can't tell you how many times I cringe when I see people putting a slip-on pipe or modifying their airbox cover or even just taking the insert out of the stock muffler and not adding any fuel tuner to it. These bikes run so lean stock, they're on the borderline of being too lean. If you do anything to alter it, you're significantly depreciating the life cycle of your engine because you're making it run that much hotter. And when the motor runs hotter, you're going to go through top ends and valves and all that stuff more frequently. You're going to need to rebuild sooner if you keep it running cooler by adding more fuel. So the power is great stock, but it runs super, super hot. Like it's ridiculously hot compared to my piped and tuned one. You can feel it on your right leg. The exhaust just gets really hot after a while riding. You can and the motor, or whatever it's coming from, the right side of the bike, you can feel the heat on your leg significantly. On my Blue Raptor that was piped and tuned, I never felt a drop of heat coming off on my leg on that bike. So that tells me this bike's running a lot hotter just by seat of the pants. The other thing is when you first start this bike, even when it's hot and it's warmed up and it's ready to go, you've been riding it, you shut it off, take a break, start it back up. It has a high idle for a minute or two before it comes back down. My blue one with the fuel tuner and the pipe never did that. It would fire up and just idle at a steady idle. You wouldn't have a high hanging idle, and that's a sign of it being really lean at idle. You have a little bit of a high hanging idle. It's running super lean. So the other big difference is that I noticed is usable power. So while the peak power may only be a few horsepower difference, let's say you're going to get about 44 or 45 horsepower on a stock Raptor on a dyno. My blue one was 50 horsepower on the dyno. Now you might say that's only 5 horsepower, but it's 5 horsepower on a stock 45 horsepower bike. You know, that's not like adding 5 horsepower to a 300 horsepower vehicle or car. You're not going to notice that. You notice 5 horsepower, I'm going to tell you right now. And also it's the usable power. So in the sand dunes, primarily, I'll run a lot times in third gear a lot. I have to shift a little bit more with the bike being stock. Third gear revs out and then falls flat after peak power is achieved in third gear. And then I sometimes got to shift up to fourth, or feel I need to shift up to fourth. And then when you shift up to fourth, and in the dunes and the sand, and then at that point, the fourth gear doesn't have quite enough power, you're right back down to third. So when I had my blue one, I'd be doing big sand bowls or pulling big hills in third gear, and the peak power was there for a broader range of RPM. It didn't just hit the peak and then die off quick. It's not that it had a bunch more over rev, but it felt like it did. I know you get a lot more over rev on these motors when you cam them and you put a cam in them, but just opening up the exhaust and adding more fuel, it just made the gears feel longer. You could use them for a longer period of time. You could lug it down really low and it would pull out a lot quicker. It will still pull out when you lug the bike stock low, but it's way more noticeable when it's piped and tuned. So the power band is a lot more usable when you add an exhaust and a fuel tuner on these bikes. And so riding it stock, I'm kind of honestly bored. I'm bored of the bike stock. And so I talked about in a previous video, keeping the bike or not keeping the bike. And the reason I said that is because I don't really get a lot of use of the Raptor on an everyday. I use it when I go on my trips. I meet up with Pete and the Brewers and, Ian and those guys, and we ride. And we all get together on our group meetups in Oklahoma or Indiana last year, and we have a blast, and it's great. Everybody's on sport quads, and I use the bike a lot in those circumstances. And then my dune trips, which is usually 4 times a year, sometimes 5. So that's really the only time I've been using the Raptor over the last couple of years. And then every day in the desert, I used to have a 4x4 quad I would use a lot. I don't currently have a 4x4 quad in the fleet. My wife does. And then I have the 2 dirt bikes. So I'd contemplated on getting rid of the Raptor and getting a Renegade 1000, honestly, because I'll get more daily use out of the Renegade 1000. I'll throw a pipe on that and have the ECU tuned, and that bike I'll get more use out of it personally, just exploring the desert on a weekly basis, as opposed to the Raptor, just for a leisurely cruise out. A little more comfort in the saddle, and so I've contemplated doing that. The other thing too is if I keep the bike, which I probably will, in all honesty. The Renegade idea was something I was kind of flirting with, but ideally I would like to have this and a Renegade, and then just keep this for certain riding trips like I mentioned, and then having the Renegade for every day. But keeping this bike, it without a doubt needs a pipe and a tune. Like, I'm done with it in stock form. I don't even want to ride it anymore stock. It's almost, I'm tired of the way it sounds. For one, it sounds like a lawnmower, and then it needs those characteristics that I mentioned that the pipe and the tune give you. And I don't need to add an air intake or anything like that. I rode the other bike without an air intake. I could just throw the open airbox lid, I have a filtered lid that I saved off my other one, on there. It's kind of like a big 2.5 it would be instead of a big 3, and it'd be perfect because it definitely needs it. If you're serious about wanting to get a lot of usable power out of the bike, it just amplifies what's already there, basically. Now, these bikes don't come as restricted and as crappy running as a stock YFZ 450. Stock YFZ 450, our owners have a lot of issues on a stock ECU with them running right. They have a bad hiccup at the bottom. They run really lean too, and they have some hesitation, and there's just no bottom end power on those 450s. When you tune those and open the pipe up on those, honestly, the 450s need a whole new ECU, basically. But when you do that on those, that really makes those bikes a totally different animal. With the Raptor, you're basically amplifying what's already there. You already have a lot of power. You already have a lot of torque. But you're making it run smoother, cooler, and broadening the power band. And so that's why I think if you have a bone stock Raptor, I think even if you like it like that, I seriously think you'd benefit. You can get a quieter exhaust, get the Yoshi, keep the tip in it. That's the quietest exhaust you're going to get. It's a little bit pricey, but the quality is amazing. I did the packing on that Yoshimura pipe with like 90 hours on it, and it didn't even need to be repacked. The packing was mint inside. I literally wasted 2 hours of my life repacking that muffler. I didn't need it. So you can rest assured you get that pipe, and it's going to last you. I contemplate even getting the same pipe for this bike, but for this bike, I would like to do something different. And so I'll probably do a DASA with some custom coloring on the can. And then an EHS, either ECU flash or a fuel tuner. I'm kind of done with the power commanders in all honesty. I did the power commander on my blue one. It crapped out on me. I don't think it ever was perfect. I think I always had either a bad one from the get-go, and it progressively got worse, or it just went bad on me at one point because it just wouldn't hold a tune. It was very erratic. I switched to just a basic fuel tuner from EHS Racing, and my last trip on that bike, if you watch the riding videos from the Indiana trip last year on that blue one, we went to the Badlands Bash and rode the Brewer compound on that. That was the last trip I did with the blue one before I sold it. That bike ran better than it ever did. It was flawless. There was no backfire on decel. There was no hiccup in acceleration. It never ran better. And it was just a fuel tuner, piggyback fuel tuner from EHS Racing. They have them calibrated pretty good. And I would, without a doubt, consider going that route again with this. It's really all it needs. You're not going to be able to change the timing. But in all honesty, like I said, I had the Power Commander 5 before that with the timing adjusted and all, and the bike ran stronger with just the EHS tuner on there. So I wouldn't have any hesitation to do that again here. And plus, it's a lot simpler. There's a lot less plugs and wires piggybacking off everything to go wrong. It's one plug into the injector harness, and that's it, you know. So we'll probably go that route. I already have the steering stabilizer on this bike. That's something that I highly suggest you do too. I've talked to a couple of people in the comment section on my other videos, and you know, on Instagram posts, and people that have messaged me privately and asked about the steering and stuff and how to get rid of the twitchiness. And high speed on any ATV is going to be a little twitchy. It's just the nature of the beast. If you're going 50, 60 miles an hour on ATV, you know, one false move of the handlebars, it could be a bad day. So it's going to be twitchy regardless. But adding a steering stabilizer, not the stick style ones, but these here, like from Precision Racing. I got this from PeteHager.com. I had this on my blue one. I took it off when I sold it, and I put it on, stayed there for this because it's a $500 part. Huge investment, but it's the single best investment I made on the Raptors, on the two Raptors I had. Even versus the, you know, tuning it and adding an exhaust, that's a huge improvement. But this here really saves a lot of fatigue. It takes a lot of fatigue out of the riding, takes all the twitchiness out. If you hit something with one wheel, you know, it really makes it safer riding. I have them fairly stiff. I think I have the settings at 9 and 9. 9 for the center. And you'll see when you get one, there's two dials for the side. Anything past, like, say, is the center setting, which is like the bar straight into like maybe 3/4 turned. And then you have the side, so like when you fully turned and you hit something, how it feels there. And you can see the difference. If you turn this, open the sides one all the way up and leave the center one stiff. Once you turn the bars past center at a certain point, you'll feel it free up and it'll be a lot easier to pull. So that's how you know the range and where that works if you want to fiddle around with that. But I have them both at like 9 and 9. It's perfect. It's a little on the stiff side, but it takes away any oh shit moments. Like, you know, you hit something, there's a rut, you hit it with one tire versus two, or in a situation where like you're turning and you hit something and it would typically want to rip the bars out of your hands. I never have a moment like that. And there's been a couple instances over the past couple of years between this and the blue one where I'm like, oh man, if I didn't have that stabilizer saving my rear end right there, it's worth every penny. And it also helps with a little bit of the fatigue with when you go over a lot of cross chop stuff. You're still going to get tired, obviously. You're still going to feel it. But it takes a little bit of the back and forth out of the bars. So it will reduce the fatigue in those circumstances for you. It's not going to completely eliminate it. But anything you can do to add to your ride comfort and add to the quality of the ride, which enables you to ride longer, especially at my age. You know, I'm in fairly good shape, but I'm 48 years old, just turned 48 last week. And anything I can do to add to the comfort of the riding, for me, is a big plus in terms of modifications. But the rest of the bike here, in terms of issues, things gone wrong. I hadn't have anything go bad on my Raptor 700 that wasn't just basic maintenance on my blue one. In the 125 hours I owned it, I think I replaced the clutch cable at like 110 hours. On this bike, I've had two issues. So the clutch cable was binding up on me with only, just recently actually I changed it. So with the last trip to the dunes, I was at about 25 hours, and I felt like the clutch was just pulling really hard. I brought it home, I lubed it up, tried to work it in. It just wasn't helping at all. So I ordered a new clutch cable. It was only like 20-something dollars, a brand new clutch cable. Replaced it. Now it's buttery smooth. It's perfect. No problems. You could two-finger it. The other thing that I had issue with this bike was, it's the only other thing, but it was a little freaky at the moment. We were at the dunes. We were doing some hill pulls and shooting this big sand walls. And when I got to the top the last time, I smelt oil, and then my buddy Larry and Scott I was with, and Larry was like, "Dude, you got oil pouring out of the tank." So I shut the bike down, and this bolt here on the top oil line must have backed out, or it wasn't torqued right from the factory. Not something that would really be caught at the dealer, and I didn't catch it either for the first 17, 18 hours, I think is when it happened, owning the bike. But it had walked out a few turns, and this was just popped out a little bit, and so oil was coming out there where it would go in. And if you take this out right under where the tube part is, there's a tiny little nipple that sits into the hole and is an O-ring. So that was out. This had backed out enough, the screw, so that was coming out enough so the oil was squirting out of here. So I had oil pouring down the tank. So I got back. I drove it back to camp. We hand tightened it as much as I could, and then my buddy Scott had a 10mm wrench. I made it a little bit snug, brought it back to camp, completely took it off again, wiped it all clean, and then put it back on. I haven't had a problem since, so it just could have been something that was overlooked at the factory. It wasn't torqued to spec. I can't imagine it walking out if it was torqued correctly, so probably wasn't. Something missed on Yamaha's part. But that stuff happens. You just have to be aware. It's a reason why you want to look over your machine after every ride, because you're going to catch these things before they happen. Other than that, everything's been fine. I've checked the torque on everything else. Everything seems good. I checked the bottom oil line after that happened. I was kind of concerned. Everything looks good there. Everything else is fine. I changed oil regularly on this thing. I changed it about every 10 hours. And then in the first 10 hours, I think I changed it twice. So 3 times even. I think I changed it 3 times the first 10 hours I owned it. And then I've changed it every 10 hours since. So that's it, man. I don't think you can go wrong buying a Raptor 700 if you want a new sport quad. If you're going to do a versatile type of riding, I think the Raptor is the better choice over the YFZ, personally, because the YFZ you kind of have to ride aggressive all the time, and you really don't with the Raptor. You can it's perfectly happy lugging low RPMs. It doesn't run bad in those situations. But if you're going to leave it stock, just know it's going to run pretty hot on your leg. At minimum, I would say, even if you want to keep the exhaust quiet, what you could do is you can just add the fuel tuner just to get a little bit more fuel in it, just to get it to run a little cooler and more efficient, more properly. And so you'll alleviate the heat heat issues with it running a little bit cooler, and leave a stock exhaust if that's what you want. If you're not really looking for the power, and you don't want any more sound, just get the fuel tuner. I mean, it'll make a world of difference in the riding quality, and even starting it up. That hanging high idle I have. My buddy Scott's got an 07, and it's bone stock, and he says the same thing with his. He notices that, and my blue one never did that, and that was fuel tuned. So I think that's a symptom of it being really lean at idle. The other thing I'll notice too is I got to hit the starter button, and it won't fire up as fast as my blue one did. So that's definitely also a sign of it being lean. Once you tune these things, and you'll notice on any fuel tune, if you look at the mapping for these Raptors, it's a bunch of fuel right off idle, and at idle, it adds a bunch of fuel, and then the map will lean out more as it gets to the higher RPM. These things at wide open throttle stock are tuned fairly well. It's the low RPM to mid-range where it's tuned pretty lean. So that's where it needs a lot of help. So I think that's it for this one. There's really not a lot else to talk about. I just kind of wanted to talk about my thoughts on a stock Raptor, owning a stock Raptor at 30 hours, and whether or not, I was happy with it or disappointed. I think a lot of people will probably be fine with it, but me personally, after owning a tuned, like I said, tuned and piped Raptor, I can't ride this thing anymore this way. It needs fuel assistance for sure, and a pipe. So that's it, guys. Stay tuned for some more videos to come on the Raptor, the dirt bikes, everything else we got here. TRX 250. We got the Raptor 350, which we haven't done almost anything with. That's another thing in the garage. I'm not 100% sure what we're going to do with moving forward. That's my daughter's. And yeah, we got 2 dirt bikes there, Husky and WR. So this is Joe with Odyssey Off-Road. Appreciate you guys checking out the video. We'll give you a nice shot of these Resto Quad headlights firing up to end the video. You can get yours over at PeteHager.com or from Resto Quad Direct. But if you go to PeteHager.com and order them, that's what I would do. I order everything through him. If he's got a lot of parts available on his website, so check him out, PeteHager.com. You can get yourself a steering stabilizer, the Resto Quad lights. He sells DASA exhaust now. He's got Nerf bars, bumpers, skid plates, everything you need for the Raptor 700s or YFZ 450 or whatever you like. And other bikes too. So again, it's Joe at Odyssey Off-Road. Smash that subscribe button if you haven't. Hit the thumbs up button if you liked it. And we will catch you guys out on the next one.